hello again, beautiful people. Thank you so much for the birthday love. It feels good. I appreciate each and every one of you. I have to be honest, I don't feel 100% this morning, but how I feel is not how I am. And I recognize who and whose I am. I recognize that I am the sky and not the weather. And so how I feel may be a temporary storm, but how I am is perfect, whole, and complete. Yes, yes. Because I know that my word is working for me. So I want to get into this message. I'm excited about this message in this series. We're going to go a little deeper. Last week we started with Stand Up and Be Counted. It was inspired by the movie A Bug's Life. And we looked at a powerful principle that shows that many times those of us that feel like we are the weak ones and we don't have power and truth, those in power know that if we ever come together, we have more power than they ever will. And so it's important that we stand up and be counted. We stand up and be counted as things are taking place in our world. We stand up and be counted as we look at what's taking place in our individual lives. I invite you to go back to that message. And if you haven't seen the movie, go and see the movies. Sydney, you told me y'all watched it together as a family. And it's something that you can do with each of these movies. So this week I was thinking about the zoo. And I was thinking about petting zoos and even in parks. You see signs that say, don't feed the animals, right? And there are a lot of different reasons why. We know that people have been killed by zoo animals. There was an interesting story that I read a few years back. A woman, she was actually banned from the zoo because she was feeding the lions cookies and trying to take selfies. And again, we recognize that there are some dangers. We recognize that people have been hurt and harmed. Even when we think about the parks, one of the things that happens, we think it's a wonderful thing, and many of us did it as we were kids or have seen it done, where you take bread and you feed the birds. But that actually can create a lot of issues. It can actually bring harm and disease and other things. There's also a practical piece here, particularly at the zoo. Imagine as a parent if people were constantly visiting you every day, giving your child snacks. Just over and over again, all day long, right? They would throw off their eating patterns. They would throw off how their nutrition, all of that would happen. So that's what happens, right? You're one person at the zoo thinking this one little cookie doesn't matter. But you have hundreds and thousands of people doing the same thing every day. You're throwing off the eating patterns of the animals. So it's very, very practical, right? And so as I was thinking about feeding the animals and thinking about feeding the lions, I was reminded of a passage from Florence Scovel Shinn in The Game of Life where she talks about a lion. And she writes this. She says, "There is no peace for man or woman until we have erased all fear from the subconscious. Fear is misdirected energy and must be redirected or transmuted into faith. I am asked so often by my students, how can I get rid of fear? I reply, by walking up to the thing you are afraid of. The lion takes its fierceness from your fear. Walk up to the lion and it will disappear. Run away and it runs after you." How do we get rid of fear? By walking up to the thing that you're afraid of. Now, this is different than feel the fear and do it anyway. I know there was a best-selling book that was written on the idea, but we as metaphysicians need to know that that doesn't align with law and principle. Because if you feel the fear and do it anyway, you still have the vibration of fear with you while you're doing it anyway. Therefore, it's going to outpicture as something you don't want because the fear is still there. Metaphysicians know that what do? Just as Florence Scovel Shinn just said, fear is misdirected energy, you must redirect or transmute it into faith. So if you realize that you're feeling fear, you need to transmute the fear into faith and then go out and be great. That's what you have to do. So when we hear this idea of walking up to the thing you're afraid of, that's not saying keep the fear and go trembling towards the thing that you're afraid of. It's saying that you must actually transmute it. Because what's so interesting is that when we walk up to the lion disappears. Run away, and the lion runs after us. It actually feeds us. Now, how does any of this have to do with a Pixar movie? Well, there's a wonderful Pixar movie that I love called Monsters, Inc. And it has so much to do with a world that was created by fear. In Monsters, Inc., we are taken into the city of Monstropolis. And in this monster world, it's powered by the energy of screams from human children. At Monsters, Inc., the factory, skilled monsters employed as scarers venture into the human world to scare children and harvest their screams for energy. Through the doors, they activate portals that go into the children's bedrooms, their bedroom closet. And it is considered dangerous work because human children are believed to be toxic. Now what we find, and as we move through this world, energy production is actually starting to fail. And there's actually a scare shortage because children are no longer scared as they used to be of the monsters. And so we meet the two main characters and who are considered the top scarers in the company, Mike and Sully, played by Billy Crystal and John Goodman. And so they use fear to create power, but later as we move through the story, we find out that laughter is actually a more sustainable and more powerful energy. That they don't have to scare children, that there's nothing to be afraid of, and actually if they make the kids laugh, they create 10 times more power than they ever could have when they were using screams. So we find something interesting because this little scenario of the story is teaching us something powerful. That we can use the energy of fear and accomplish some things, but we can use the energy of joy, the energy of laughter, the energy of that which feels good and accomplish more. And so as I was thinking about this idea of the lions and thinking about fear, I heard the topic in my mind's ear, don't feed the lions. And what are the lions? What are the lions in our life? Well, some of us are dealing with the lion of lack. Some of us are feeding the lion of loneliness. Some of us are feeding the lion of failure and disappointment. And some of us are feeding the lion of unworthiness. Because you see, growing up, we were taught to feed the lions. Even when there's sufficient evidence that feeding the lions doesn't support us, as I just talked about, feeding the lions in the zoo or feeding the animals, there's sufficient evidence and enough information that shows us why that's not beneficial. But even when we have that information, we still may feed fear because it's normalized. We have a term as humans called healthy fear. Fear is always unhealthy. And I can say that because fear never gives us what it is that we want. It, as a vibrational quality, it never turns out the way that you want it to turn out. Right? Fear keeps you shut away and shut out. Fear keeps you thinking you're unworthy. Fear keeps you thinking that you can't be something, that you can't do something, that you can't have something. Fear never gives us what we want. And so in this section that I shared from Florence Scovel Shinn, this is in The Game of Life and How to Play It, and this is from the chapters Casting the Burden. And so she gives us a remedy, and she talks about this idea, we understand that we need to transmute our fear, that we need to move fear to faith, realizing that they're of the same vibration. Fear is the belief in something that has not happened yet, right? Something that's generally only in our minds first. And faith is the belief in something that hasn't happened yet, that's only in our minds until it's manifested. Same energy, but we have to move to a different pole. So we have to move to the pole of faith. And so she gives us an affirmation, she gives us a prayer. She says that we can begin to affirm this truth. I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free. You feel yourself in the place of fear, you can cast that burden. Now, you might need to switch it up a little bit depending on what's going on. You might need to say, I cast this burden of lack on the Christ within and I go free. I cast this burden of loneliness. I cast this burden of unworthiness on the Christ within and I go free. If you don't like Christ, you can say God within, the divine within. But it's important that you understand that you use the word within. It reminds me of how we craft the 3-column prayer and 4 T's. What is God? Your name for God? Where is God? Within. And then what is it doing? Right? I cast this burden on divine intelligence within, and I go free. But it's important that we understand, again, you don't have to use the word Christ, but you got to understand where you're casting the burden. What is this thing all about? Because when we say, I cast this burden on the Christ within and I go free, I am not saying, I cast this burden on Jesus. I know that many of us have heard those songs, and what a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. what we recognize is we are not casting any burden on a man that lived thousands of years ago that can't do nothing for us now. But we are casting our burden on this inner Christ, this inner knowing, this thing within you that knows that all is well, the eternal solution finder within you. That's what we're casting the burden on. We're casting the burden on divine intelligence, all knowledge, all wisdom, all power, love itself, that which knows only unity, that which knows only harmony, that which knows that all is good, perfect, whole, and complete. And I was thinking about this word. This is a word that we find if you study a course of love. There's a term that we read in that text, I am the accomplished. And I love this idea because the idea of the Christ within us is this knower within us that is already accomplished. Because think about this for a second. Many times a thing that we want to be, a thing that we want to do, a thing that we want to have is rooted in it doesn't exist right now, right? That experience doesn't exist right now. You don't have that thing in form. The Christ within you is completion, accomplishment, right? If you're already accomplished, right? When we say someone, oh, this is a highly accomplished person, a highly accomplished lawyer, or a highly accomplished doctor, or a highly accomplished politician, that says that there are things that have already been done, that have already been completed, that their resume shows all of these wonderful things that have taken place as a result of their consciousness, their knowledge, and who and what they are. And so the Christ within you is the accomplished. It's that thing within you that lives in the realm of done, that lives in the realm of the answer, that lives in the realm of it is complete. So when we say perfect, whole, and complete, it's that thing that's accomplished. It's already accomplished in consciousness the very thing that you want. It is already accomplished in consciousness the very thing that you want to be, do, or have. So how do we use this affirmation? Because it sounds good, right? Oh, that's all I got to do, Pastor Greg? I'm in fear right now, and all I got to do is just say, I cast the burden on the Christ within, and I go free, and voila, everything is complete. Not so. And so we read in the text, Florence Scovel Shinn writes this: the statement should be made over and over and over, sometimes for hours at a time, silently or audibly with quietness but determination. In steadily repeating the affirmation, I cast this burden on the Christ within and go free, the vision clears, and with it a feeling of relief, and sooner or later comes the manifestation of good, be it health, happiness, or supply. And this is so incredibly important because many of us, we take affirmations or we take prayers or we take a spiritual mind treatment from somewhere or somebody or something that we heard, and we think that it's a magic pill. Meanwhile, we have forgotten the principle, as Napoleon Hill so wonderfully clarifies for us, that it is only through the repeated use of affirmations, to use your conscious mind to speak over and over again to your subconscious mind, that you can make any change. So if you are in the experience of fear, that means you've been believing fearful thoughts. That means in your subconscious there's a belief that there's a reason to fear. There's a belief that you can be hurt or harmed. There's a belief that you're unworthy. And so you need to move into this place of knocking on the door of your subconscious so that the old beliefs the door can be opened, the old beliefs can run out, and you can place new beliefs within. So it's important that you use that time, and again, speak this, she says, sometimes for hours, silently or audibly, with quietness but determination, until you start to feel a feeling of relief. Because when you feel the feeling of relief, feeling or emotion is the first manifestation. So if you feel the feeling, and you feel the sense of relief, that means you are manifesting right then and there the very thing that it is that you desire. You are manifesting this transmutation from fear to faith. And it's interesting because every affirmation is a prayer and every prayer is an affirmation. And so it's important that when we understand what we're doing, that as we're saying, I cast this burden on the mind of God and I go free, that we're praying, every affirmation is a prayer and a prayer is an affirmation, but we are stating what is. This is not a moment to ask, oh God, please take this fear away from me. Oh Lord, please let me just make it to the end of the week. Oh Lord, please help me pay my rent. Oh Lord, please let me get this pay raise. Please let me get this job. That's not what we're doing. Every affirmation is a prayer, and every prayer is an affirmation. And a prayer and an affirmation is a statement of what is. So when we say this thing, we are saying, I release this thing now, and I am free now. And until you feel the release, even if it's only slight, until you feel the release, don't let that thing go. But there's another piece to this. recognize that faith must be active. Yes, yes. We've read in scripture and we've heard it so many times, and people misuse and misquote this all the time. Now, in the text we read, faith without works is dead. Many times what we hear people say is faith without work is dead. And that has led people to believe that you got to work on it. You got to do work, because that's what God needs. And that's not what it's saying. Faith without works, what it means is that you run around here talking about you new thought and you're a metaphysician and you know these laws, and yet there's no demonstration of it in your life. That's dead faith. True faith demonstrates. It would be as if I'm telling y'all that I'm a chef and I went to the Culinary Institute of America and you ain't never seen me cook nothing. I'm always talking about the delicious foods that I make and the seasonings that I use, and I'm telling you about, I was hanging out with these chefs and doing this, that, and the other. Meanwhile, nobody, you talk to everybody about, well, you ever had Greg's food? Well, does he have a restaurant? I mean, is he a caterer? Nobody, nowhere has any evidence of this thing that I've been talking about. That's dead. Those are dead works. If I was a drummer, Zane's not here right now, if I was a drummer, and I'm talking about, I got the hot beats, I can play. Meanwhile, I don't own a drum set. You ain't never seen me with a pair of sticks in my hand. Never seen me play with a band. And I can't keep a beat. Or like a metaphysician who never proves the law. This is why Pastor Yolanda says it and reminds us week in and week out that God is not an intellectual exercise. This philosophy, this movement that we are a part of, New Thought, it's not an intellectual exercise. But the idea is that we learn and then we demonstrate. I've shared this story, it's here now, so I'm going to share it. One of my mentors, when I was a teenager, he asked me, he said, define learning. What is the definition of learning? And I said, learning is, when you go to school and you study, you take a test, and you get a good grade, and so you've learned something. And he kind of chuckled to himself and he said, no, that's not the definition of learning. And he told me a story. He said there was a man that walked down the street and he came upon an alley. And he decided to go down that alley, and when he went down that alley, there was a vicious dog that immediately ran after him to attack him. And the man turned around, he ran away, he was able to get away from that dog. And the next day, he finds himself on the same street, walking next to that same alley. He turns down in the same alley, and the same dog is there running after him. That man hasn't learned anything. Because learning is a demonstrated act. How do you know you've learned something? Through your demonstration. We would know that he had learned something about that alley if he looked at that alley and said, and kept going. And so we recognize it is the same thing for each and every one of us. As we are studying these principles, as we are studying these laws, as we are reading the books and amassing knowledge, the point is for demonstration, not to say, I have this book, not to talk about all the meals that you're cooking that nobody's ever had. And Florence Goldstein in The Game of Life and How to Play It, she gives us an example of a woman that she worked with who did this very thing. And I love this story because it shows the level of dedication that many times is required for the change that we want, right? So often we're looking for the overnight success, but she talks about a woman who was separated from her husband. And basically he refused all offers for reconciliation. She said that it was through some miscommunication sort of what led to their breakup. And he wasn't having it. He wasn't trying to get back together. But she had come to learn these principles. And she decided to affirm this truth. There is no separation in divine mind. Therefore, I cannot be separated from the love and companionship which are mine by divine right. Now there's some beautiful teaching in here, because you notice how she didn't talk about him. She said, I cannot be separated from the love and companionship which are mine by divine right. That left the room for this or something better. Right? It wasn't about that particular human, but it was about developing that consciousness or shifting that consciousness that had obviously existed in her mind, that she could be separated from love and companionship. And so this was doing the work of unifying her back into that truth. And so what she did, because we said faith without works is dead, she began to activate her faith in a very powerful way. Every day, she set a place at the table for him for a year. She never wavered, and according to the story, one day he walked in. She wasn't just living and I think this can even be egoic at times, right? Oh, I know how to affirm properly, right? She wasn't just living in that, oh, I got these words that I know how to say and I've learned how to use these principles. She took it a step further, which was necessary for her own mind to actually move into that place of setting the table. If you've read The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, Catherine Ponder, she shares a similar story about a single mother who didn't have enough money to feed her children. And she prayed the prayer in faith and spoke the word of supply. And what did she do? She set the table as though they were going to have enough money to buy dinner. And of course, what happened, they actually had the money and all was well and they were able to eat. But she activated her faith, right? And it's important for us to understand that it's not just enough to stand around in affirmation and speak this word, I cast the burden on the Christ within and I go free, and expect magic to happen. Because none of this is magic, it's law. But we recognize that we have an opportunity to activate our faith. So I want to give you another way to use this. And this is, I think, even going another level deeper in practicality and can be helpful as it really marries these two concepts. It marries the idea of affirming, but also doing something actively. And this is a process that we learned from Abraham Hicks in Ask It and It's Given. They call it the placemat process. Many of you may be familiar with it. According to the story, Esther and Jerry were at a meal, and they were going through their to-do list, and Esther is a person that loves to create to-do lists, and so she really had more things on her list than could humanly be done in one day. It would probably take 10 or more days for that thing to be accomplished, and she was feeling overwhelmed. And so Abraham gave her a way to utilize her to-do list in a way that's powerful, creative, and affirmative. And so, of course, because they were at a meal, there's this paper placemat in front of them. And so Abraham says, take this large paper placemat, and we will guide you. Draw a line down the center of your placemat, and as a heading on the left side of the line, write things I will do today. As a heading on the right side of the line, write things I would like the universe to do. Now, looking over your long things to do list, select only those things you absolutely intend to do this day. Things you feel you must do, things you really want to do, select only those things that no matter what, you intend to do today. And enter them on the left side of your placemat, beneath the heading, things I will do today. And now enter all the other tasks on the universe's side of your placemat. So you see how this is bringing us into an even deeper level of practicality. You may have affirmed and you may have prayed, I cast this burden on the mind of God. I cast the burden of this day or this to-do list on the mind of God, on the Christ within, and I go free. But now to make it real, to this idea of I go free, that I'm letting myself go. I'm not worrying about it anymore. I'm not thinking about it anymore. I'm not allowing it any more space into my consciousness. This allows you to do that in a practical way. Because you may still have those things that are spinning in your mind. Put that on the side of things I would like the universe to do. And then what's so incredibly clear and important, and this may take practice, is that the things that you put on your list are only the things that you intend to do, you feel you must do, but this is important, things you really want to do. Why is that important? Because the vibration of things that I want to do will be a vibration of feeling good, will be a vibration of joy, will be a vibration of ease. If the things that you really want to do, in your mind you already see them done. In your mind you'll be able to do them easily and effortlessly. It won't even feel like work. And so beautifully enough, what happens according to the story is that Esther found that she completed all of the things that she put on her list, and the things that were on the universe's list also got completed. Members of her staff just randomly got inspired to take care of certain things, even though they hadn't spoken to her. And they reported back, oh, I took care of this thing, I hope it's helpful. People that she had been trying to reach and waiting for them to call, trying to reach them, they just called her, quote unquote, out of the blue. Out of the blue is another way to say out of consciousness, right? And so I encourage you to use this process in a creative way understanding what's underneath this is this idea with the affirmation and this process that you're not alone and you were never designed to do this thing alone. And so casting the burden, what it means, and in the process of this placemat process, is getting out of your own way. If we read further in this piece about the process, Abraham says, we explained to Esther that in order to achieve anything, she has only two things to accomplish. She must identify her object of desire, and then she must get out of the way of letting it happen. In other words, ask, and then find a way of achieving a vibration that allows it, because it is always given wherever you ask. So my encouragement to you today is don't feed the lions. Don't feed the lions of fear. Don't feed the lions of lack and worthiness and loneliness and pain, but cast the burden. Put those things on the side of the placemat that the universe will take care of. Cast the burden on the Christ within you. Cast the burden on the knower within you. Cast the burden on the solution finder within you. Cast the burden knowing that you are the accomplished, that in your mind that thing is already done. In your mind that thing has already been accomplished. In your mind that thing is already resolved. Live in the resolution of it and use this process. And what you find, just as we found in the beautiful example of the movie in Monsters, Inc., is that you don't have to use the power of fear to power your life. But you can use the power of joy to power your life and your world. With that, I invite everybody to stand. And we take a deep breath in, breathing in gratitude and breathing out love. Breathing in love, breathing out gratitude. Breathing in love, breathing out gratitude. I'm reminded in You Are the Placebo, we read about how folks have been able to heal themselves through laughter, through watching movies that bring laughter and bring joy. And this is not just conjecture, it can literally be measured, that what happens when we allow ourselves, if you're not feeling good, if you're not feeling well, to watch things that bring joy, that bring laughter, to watch a funny film, to watch a funny sitcom, it's measurable that the genes that promote bad health turn off. And the genes within us that promote good health and well-being turn on. And so you literally begin to boost your immune system and your body begins to heal. People have healed cancer this way. People have healed things that it's said you can't heal this way. And it's now scientifically proven, which is wonderful. So right here and right now, Mother, Father, God, I recognize that you are joy itself. I recognize that you are laughter. I recognize that you are happiness, for you are a happy God. I recognize that as you are happiness and you are a happy being, a happy God, a happy intelligence, a happy knower, I recognize that the happiness that you are lives within me. I recognize that I am one with that happiness. I recognize that the happiness that you are lives within each and every one of my sisters and brothers here, assembled and within the sound of my voice. My sister, my brother, happiness resides within you. This power that is greater than fear, this power that is greater than worry, this power that is greater than doubt, this power that's greater than loneliness, this power that is greater than unworthiness, it dwells within you right now. And by simply affirming, I cast this burden on the Christ within and I go free, you are turning your attention to that happiness. You are turning your attention to that power that empowers all things. You are turning your attention to that joy that is the joy in all things. You are turning your attention to that beauty that is the beauty in all things. You are turning your attention to that resolute knowledge, that internal knower, the solution finder. I am so grateful and thankful that this law works without respect of persons. I'm grateful to know that these laws work whether we are a child or whether we are elderly. I'm grateful to know that these laws work whether we are in Brooklyn or whether we are in Los Angeles. I am so grateful to know that these Laws work whether we are on the North Pole or the South Pole, whether we are in Mars or whether we are on Pluto. I am so grateful to know that these laws work at all times, in all times, for all people, easily and effortlessly, equally. So right here and right now, we choose to make use of the law. No longer are we going to talk about our faith, but we're going to demonstrate this faith. No longer will we talk about the law, but we will use the law. No longer will we study the law, but we will demonstrate the law. Because we recognize as we do that, we become the examples for our brothers and sisters. We become the examples for our family. We become the examples for our co-workers. We become the examples for our neighborhood of what is possible when we make the choice to change our mind, to turn from fear and shift it into faith. So right here and now, we walk by faith. We live in faith. We act from faith. And we know that our lives shall be good and only good. I release this prayer with joy and thanksgiving, knowing that this word can never return to be void, but is already accomplished. And together we say amen. Amen. Ashe. Ashe. And so it is.